This is the High Value Man Conversation Podcast, a show dedicated to the mission of building high-value men. Men that are courageous, committed, and uncompromising in their pursuit of greatness.
You run the day and stop having the day run you.
Monday, get better. Tuesday, get better. Wednesday, get better.
Everybody's great when they're not tired. Champions is when they're tired. That's when the real champions come out.
The next day, get up, get up, get up, get up. Keep going.
Win. I'm going to win.
You're not as far away from these dreams as you think you are.
One great man means a great family, a great neighborhood, a better city, community, state, and the world. The question is, if not you, then who? Welcome back to the High Value Man Conversation. This episode is one you're going to want to pay attention to if you are in a relationship, you want to be in a relationship, you're not in a relationship, or you have relationships in your life. Because we're talking about the number one lie that most people are actually participating in and they don't even know it.
So if you're breathing, pay attention.
So we're talking about attachment and authenticity. So attachment theory, we're going to break down what attachment theory is, why it's important, how every single human since the day you were born has a need for attachment, healthy attachment, and the unhealthy ways that we've attached through relationships, and then authenticity. And authenticity, probably the easiest way of looking at that is, are you being your true self?
Yeah, so if you want to know why you show up the way that you show up, what impacts the way that you show up, who you are as an individual, how you think, how you process, how you put things to action or choose not to put things to action. They all come down to these two. Literally one of my favorite conversations that we'll probably ever have is this one with authenticity and attachment. So hold on, grab your notepads, and let's go.
Let's go. The first thing we're going to touch on is attachment theory. Now, I would encourage you to first and foremost check this book out because we're going to reference it. It's a phenomenal tool. It's called Wired for Love. You can do the Google who it's by, but it basically breaks down attachment theory. It's a really three easy metaphors we're going to talk about. But attachment theory is based on a psychological study that was done, I don't know, maybe 100 years ago, roughly, something like that.
Sometime in the past.
Sometime in the past. Do your Google on this. And it breaks down a connection between an infant's caregiver and the connection to the relationship dynamics later in life. And so it breaks it down into three. There's actually four done a little bit later, but there's three that we're going to talk about and how people attach in relationship. It goes all the way back to your childhood and also shows up in your romantic relationship. But three ways that you create healthy or unhealthy attachment and how it interplays with your partner.
That's for sure. And what I love about attachment, this is for all of us. What is attachment? Our attachment is a need. It's not a want. Guys, it's a need to connect, a need to be a part of something, a need to love, and a need to be loved. And so what attachment is it's the core foundation of who we are, what our needs are. Level one. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for you, that life doesn't happen on an island or in a vacuum. We live in a world where we interact with people, we're in relationship with people, and we are by design, we are designed by God to do life with others.
Yeah.
We talk often on here about not being the lone wolf. And so many of us have lived in seasons where we've been a lone wolf, and that does not work. That is not a model to follow.
Yeah.
A lone wolf, when you find them in nature, it's because they've been sent to die. So if you end up being a lone wolf, well, your time is dwindling.
Yeah.
But if you know that you're made to be in relationship, attachment is the biggest part of that.
Love that.
So I want to go deep with that today.
Love it. And I love that you said island, Josh. No man is an island, because that's actually one of the attachment styles. And so the book that we'll reference, Wired for Love, island, as they describe, is an avoidant attachment style. And so in intimacy, when conflict happens or closeness happens, the island personality type inside of the attachment theory model is avoidant. That they tend to want to just distance themselves. And so you think about if you've ever been in a relationship dynamic, maybe you or your partner, as closeness happens, as conflict happens, as intimacy starts to happen, there's this feeling inside like, oh man, I don't know what's going on, but I just want to get away from this person. And it's not even them, it's what's internally happening. This is triggered from the state of how you were brought up. And so we think about attachment theory goes back to infancy, how your caregiver gave you, met your needs, or didn't. This avoidant or island metaphors we're going to lean into is one of the attachment theories.
Yeah, it's really great. So what is attachment and how do we meet our attachment? I'm going to jump in the notes on this because I don't want to get down the rabbit hole, but attachment, how do we meet it? So attachment is met through contact. So contact is both physical and verbal. It's also met through connection. Connection is our emotional and spiritual connection. So we have contact, we have connection, and we also have love. So we experience love through protection, patience, tenderness, kindness, healthy leadership, and service. So through contact, connection, and love, that is how we manifest connection with another individual, whether that's a spouse, a guardian, our children, in the marketplace, or friendships in general, of just how do we get to that portion of what is attachment.
I love that. So what I also hear as you explain what attachment is, if those ways are not met, it creates a deficit. And so when I think about growing up, if we're going to lean on this island metaphor for just a second, if you were in a relationship dynamic with your caregiver and they are not meeting your needs in the ways that Josh described through contact, love, verbal connection, it will create this feeling of, oh man, I feel like I'm on an island and I have to meet my own needs, which then shows up in your later relationship dynamics.
No, for sure. And I love that. So the childhood, because we've all been a child. If you were ever a kid, raise your hand.
Yep.
All of us were. And so we all have some sort of context in which we were raised, whether that was a parent, a guardian, and someone raised you. As an infant, we don't have what it takes to just go out in the world and live. We were cared for by someone.
Right.
And so if you think about the context of a child, or if you have children, how important it is, the environment with which we were raised in, that's where our attachment was actually built. The templates that we model our relationships now as adults all go back to the first 5. Science even says up to 7 years, but the first 5 years of our life is the most pivotal in the developments of our brain. So how relationship was exposed, how we were in attachment, or how we were connected to our caregivers and our parents, is now how we model and mirror how we do relationship romantically with our own children, in the marketplace, with friendships. It all goes back to there. And not all of us can raise our hand and say, man, I had the ideal, I had the greatest parents, they loved me, they were patient with me, they were caring with me, they connected with me. Most of us are going to have memories of when something did happen, and we had to choose whether we were going to stay alive. Really, that's what attachment is how we're going to stay alive, mend that relationship with that caregiver, or basically die.
Yep.
So for a child who's 1 to 5 years old, they know they need to live. Unconsciously, they know what it takes to continue to live. They've got to mend that relationship, because they don't have you, then they don't live. They need to be fed, they need to be cared for, and they need a roof over their head. And so really understanding that really all goes back to our youth.
Everything goes back to the youth. Your framework for interacting in relationship, conflict resolution, connection, closeness, all of that is based on a template that was given to us and interacted with us as children. So I touched on this briefly, but the first one is the island we're going to talk about. The second one is an anxious attachment theory, and this is kind of like a wave. You imagine a wave is up and down and in and out, constantly in flux. There's movement, there's uncertainty, it's ungrounded. So the wave is an anxious attachment style that is typically predicted based on how you were brought up. And then the third one is the healthy or anchor attachment. This is the secure attachment. It means if your caregiver left or re-entered the interaction, or you're in a relationship, conflict arises, you don't feel like the relationship is going to be on the rocks or is going to end. You have a very healthy, anchored attachment to your partnership, to yourself, and to the dynamic as a whole.
Yeah, that's really great. You can see this in children too. So children at playgrounds, so you have the child that really sticks close to the parent, really won't, they might even come hide behind your leg. Maybe they're real shy. They're not really comfortable being around other kids playing. That's one of the attachment theories. It could either be the island or the wave, potentially. But if you ever see the kid that can just take off and play, and they know mom or dad is sitting over there on the bench, that they're safe, they'll venture off 30, 40, 50, 100 feet and go play. That's a very clear picture of what a secure attachment looks like, because they know, regardless of what happens, mom's here.
Yes.
Dad's
caregiver's there.
The caregiver's there.
Yes.
And so there's this safety in who they are. That's a very great, easy picture of seeing what secure attachment can look like.
Yeah. And then you've seen the opposite where there's a young kid. I've got a client and he has been doing an amazing job with his much more introverted kid and bringing him into jujitsu. And beginning, he didn't even want to step foot inside of in the studio as a whole. He just didn't even want to go inside the studio. It was too overwhelming. Didn't even want to go on the mat. And then after the mat, didn't want to actually interact and engage with the kids. But the way that you overcome that as a parent, as you're raising up these young little gangsters, is you got to be able to recognize that there are these different attachment styles, that they're going to show up based on behavior. So the behavior predicts how the relationship is going to deepen or create conflict in the future.
No, for sure. And it plays out in all of our lives. We can all think back to moments that attachment showed up for us, whether positively or negatively.
Yeah. And if you recognize this about yourself, it's why it's so important for you as a man, a high value man, to recognize what attachment theory is. High level is we all have one. We fit into one of these 3, 4, if you really want to dive deep into the work. But you fit into one of these 3 or 4. And so that's going to be your contribution, but also it's going to be your trigger. I hate that word trigger, but it's going to be how you show up in a relationship and whether or not your partner triggers this subconscious response based on whatever's going on in the environment. So for example, I'll put myself out there. I've been both avoidant, the island, and anxious, the wave, inside of multiple relationships in the past. And so as my partner, as we get close and there's intimacy happening, I'm loving and falling in love, this feeling, that you get that feeling of just ecstasy and excitement. There's also the fear that, oh man, what if she leaves? What if the relationship doesn't work out? What if I have to start over again? So the fear and the anxiety that my partner might leave or that I might not be able to make it work, that's an anxiety-based attachment. The wave, it's the in and out, back and forth, unstable. That comes from my upbringing. I was raised by a single mom. Shared this with you guys before. Didn't have a strong, healthy, grounded, secure attachment from male role model. My mom has a very wide range of emotions, very passionate woman. And so a lot of fear though, because she had to figure it out on her own. She constantly had to solve the problems on her own and raise a son, which I can't even imagine the dynamic that must have been for her. And so what that created in regards to the emotional security in the household was that my mom was up and down, in and out wave. I mirrored and modeled that. Or in relation to my mom, I avoided her emotions so that I could deal with my own. And so I couldn't even connect for many years with my mom's emotions because they were just so foreign. I was like, I need to self-protect. I'm going to go on an island. I'm going to disconnect. I'm going to shut down. I'm going to deal with Aaron because that's how I stay safe and secure.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. It's a great way of putting it. And so what that does for us as adults now is we have 2 different ways we can show up in a moment. And that's either we can respond in the moment or we can react in a moment. I know we've talked in great depths about this. So if you're caught up as an island or as a wave or as, what's the third one? Anchor, the anchor, or the anchor secure. So if you're an anchor, then you actually are secure in your attachment. You know who you are. You know your safe places. Then you can respond. You have a lot more logic involved in your thought process.
Yeah.
You can respond to circumstances.
Yeah.
If you're living life as an island or as a wave, then you're going to find yourself a lot more reactive to scenarios. You're going to do a lot more firefighting. You may even do a lot more retreating because you're not secure in those relationships. We can find that showing up in our marriages, in our relationships, our romantic relationships, even how we parent. It shows up that way. Yeah. And of course, also in the marketplace. We've been, last few years as a nation, but even as a world, it's been unprecedented times that we've been through. You can find yourself in the financial world of even showing up that way of I'm very reactive versus I know what works. I know how to invest. I know how to save my money. I know how to do X, Y, Z. I'm responding to scenarios because I have confidence in how it's going to work out. Yeah. So it shows up in every area of our life.
And this is very fluid too. So if you are categorized right now as maybe an island, anxious, avoidance, wherever you are, this is very fluid. Once you bring awareness to it, you recognize, oh, I've got this stuff, this ish that I got to work on. Then your goal is to move towards secure attachment because inside of a relationship dynamic, there needs to be at least a healthy relationship. There needs to be at least one secure attachment so the other person can work through, evolve, and heal through their unhealthy attachment. Because the thing about attachment theory, it only shows up in relationship. And so you might be completely fine by yourself. Like, man, I got my stuff all figured out. I deal with my mom and dad stuff. But once you get into the intimacy and the closeness and relationship starts to happen and there's actually love on the line, that's when all of those childhood traumas start to get re-triggered. And this is where it's going to be so important for you to understand the why of your attachment style, what is fueling your decisions, your habits, your behaviors, your reactions, so that you can respond in a loving way.
Yeah, that's true. So if you go back and listen to episode 3, if you haven't heard it already, you see a picture of how now I am secure. I'm an anchor as far as my style goes. But I didn't start that way, Aaron. 10 years ago, when I married my brilliant doctor, she is an anchor. She had a very secure household that she grew up in. That is not what I brought
Great pedigree
to our relationship.
Yeah.
I was anxious in how I showed up, and it took years of doing relationship and really hammering on each other before I came around to understanding that attachment style and allowing myself to evolve into the authentic version of who I am, which we're going to touch on in a little bit. But once I got a hold of my authentic self, my attachments became healthy. And so my wife and I now we're 2 secure or anchored individuals. And you can go back to episode 3 and listen to a moment that we had that could have been incredibly difficult, conflict fight, but turned out to be really worked out well for us because of our attachment styles.
Love that. What's interesting too, and I just want to touch on this briefly, is your attachment style will typically attract to you a mirror for your attachment style. So what does that mean? An island who is avoidant when conflict or intimacy happens or closeness happens will typically attract a wave. And so this is where an anxious and avoidant come together. Chemistry brings them together, opposites attract, and they get into a few months in the relationship and things start to deteriorate and they can't figure out why. He runs or she runs, or there's anxiety, there's insecurity, there's all this ish that shows up in the relationship. It's typically because it's in that relationship dynamic that you see all the things that are yet to be dealt with. And so if you're avoiding in the relationship, you're running to work rather than running close to your partner, you're getting anxious when your partner leaves or there's conflict, all of that is showing you that there's areas that you need to work on for yourself.
I love that. So now we've given you the great solid what of what attachment is. Let's get an understanding of what authenticity is.
Good.
The partner there. So authenticity, again, diving into just our dialogue note, but authenticity is the capacity to know what we feel, be in touch with our bodies, and be able to freely express who we are. And I'll say that again, to be able to feel like you have the room within your relationship to freely be who we are. And most of us have not experienced that because quite often, and going back to whether you want to look at the childhood scenario or just looking at your own life, is that I'm not going to put a percentage to it, but often attachment, I'll say it this way, authenticity is sacrificed because of attachment.
Yeah.
Is that regardless of who we are, because we have such a high need to be attached to other individuals, is that we will put our needs second place in order to make this grow. And so until we discover the authentic part of ourselves and allow ourselves to be who we are, which is really just the gift that we bring to the relationship, then our attachment obviously plays into that.
Yeah. And so I'll bring it back to my upbringing. I think this is good. I speak to a lot of the nice guys that were raised by single moms. For my experience growing up, what I knew was, I didn't know was happening, but it was actually happening dynamic. I had to grow up very fast because I was an only child raised by a single mom that was doing life on her own. I was exposed to a lot of adult problems and my mom's primary problems on a consistent basis. And so my needs became secondary because my mom was going through life and dealing with her emotions and figuring out how to raise a son on her own. And so when I think about the attachment, my primary caregiver being my mom, I of course needed closeness. I wanted to feel connected. I needed to make sure my needs were met. I needed food, water, and shelter. And so there was this need to attach, but there was also this emotional dynamic that was very unhealthy because we're not meant to raise kids alone. This is why we need 2 parents in a household. And so the unhealthiness of the codependent relationship, and this is nothing against my mom, she did the best that she could with what she had. The unhealthiness of the relationship created a response. The response was, I'm going to avoid my feelings because I need to caretake and take care of my mom. And so my mom's emotional, just dynamic overshadowed my needs for individuality, which created a bond between her and I. And so this created a little bit of an avoidant side and also an anxious side for me on my relationship sides. And so when I think about that, if you were raised in a household without a great pedigree, and a great pedigree, we'll reference the Uncle Backs all day long because they come from a phenomenal pedigree. Josh's wife, Brittany, and her brother, Garrett, have 2 amazing parents. And that is a true, really good, intentional dynamic that is doing life the right way, I believe. And if you lack that and you didn't have a dynamic where two intentional parents are raising you, more than likely you've developed some type of unhealthy attachment. That's the long and short of it.
That's true. And I've got a shared story with that too, is I spent a decade of my 20s living in the bars. I was an empty individual. I did not have any intimate relationships in my life, period. I remember I was avoidant. I kept away from those. I would actually, if I got close to somebody, I'd find a reason to push them away. Ripcord completely. And so I would go and literally you would find me, I was a chameleon. This is my wife says it the best, is that I was a chameleon. That in any room that I was in, I would be who I thought I needed to be to fit in, because I had a need to have relationships. And so if we were doing X, I would do X. If we were doing Y, I would do Y. If we're jumping off a bridge, I'm going first. If we're taking a drug, give it to me. Whatever I needed to do to feel like, hey, I'm part of this. So the chameleon is how I lived. And that did not get me very far down the road.
So again, just to land this, because we're really only talking about two things: attachment and authenticity. So what Josh is saying that he sacrificed authenticity to be attached to the trap. Completely.
And hindsight's 2020. So looking back, it was just the individual that I was as a man. I was not a man. I was an empty boy. But again, because of my need to be a part of something was so high that I put everything in me that I knew, my relationship with God, my relationship with my parents, anything that was positive was secondary, just so I could feel like I was part of this group.
I talk about this, and I've talked about this for years, because this was actually a pivotal point in my personal development. What Josh is describing affects a lot of guys. I call it the nice guy. So Dr. Robert Glover, he's been a guest on the podcast. He's wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. The nice guy is people-pleasing, approval-seeking. He's passive with his hopes, dreams, and desires. And he believes that if he is nice, he'll get his needs met. And so he's typically also raised by a strong, prominent female voice in the household. And so he sacrifices true authenticity and is just nice to the world. He's not actually really nice. He is that chameleon. He's creating covert contracts. I'm going to do for you in the expectation that my needs are going to be met. And so this niceness is a disguise. It's the chameleon. I'm trying to fit in every room. I'm not going to show up authentically. I'm going to avoid conflict and confrontation. I'm strictly just going to try and be nice, because if I'm nice long enough, then my needs are going to be met. The problem with that is that that's not authentic. There has to be conflict. There's going to be challenges in life, and nice doesn't actually get anything done. And so when you're sacrificing yourself just to be nice, you're not giving the world your gift, which is your authenticity.
And so often I see really brilliant men, Aaron, in a room, and we're having conversation. We're involved in several men's groups. And so you see a man that you know is intelligent, probably does well in his market space. I live in a neighborhood where there's some nice homes, and several of these guys are in our group. So I know that they do really well in the marketplace. But you never hear from them. You never hear them speak up. I know they're brilliant, but they've been conditioned through sacrificing their authentic side. Their voice has been suppressed and repressed.
Sedated, castrated.
Completely, so that they can feel at some point in their life, so they could feel like they were good enough to be in the room, that they're willing to be in the room. They got that attachment portion, but you never get the gift of their authentic side. They may be very authentic in the marketplace, but you put them in a relationship, probably in their marriages, inside their house, and how they parent. All of that is repressed and kicked back because they have no confidence in it. They haven't chosen to look in the mirror and know who they are, whose they are, what they bring to the table, and bring voice to that.
It's good. So we're touching on two things: attachment and authenticity. And these are deep topics. Like, we're going to come back to this a lot. An authentic man, an authentic high value man, is purpose driven. He's got clarity with his vision. He's operating on a core values, not his default vices. He's really deciding the path that he's on. An authentic man is what the world needs more so than anything, but authenticity is shrouded when we don't understand attachment. And so if we don't understand how our parents' caregiving tactics, whether they were negligent or completely connected, affects our relationship dynamic, we are living in the shadows of our greatness. We can't truly be authentic because attachment is overriding. Attachment will always override.
That's very true. So I think about how do we lean into understanding our authenticity?
It's good.
Here it is. So you first got to be honest and authentic with yourself. Be authentic with yourself. Not many men have stopped to look and see, who am I? What do I bring to the table? What are my passions? What am I good at? What do I really value? What do I hate?
Yeah.
What do I value in my life? We typically get caught in these rivers, these streams that are moving. We go, well, this is life, this is who I am. And, you know, maybe you played guitar at some point, or you like to sing and as a kid, and you just quit doing that because it doesn't bring value financially.
Or somebody said something at one point. It's like, oh, you're not that good at it. And that's like deposited this seed of doubt. Yep.
Yeah. Or maybe there's an adventurous side of you, a guy that really actually likes to be outside. I know that I love to ride my bike. I like to do trail riding.
Yeah.
And so I didn't do that for quite a long time in my marriage because I wanted to be with my wife, and I thought, oh, I'm just gonna, I'll get my pleasure out of being with my wife versus taking a few hours a week to go out on the trails and do something that made my butt pucker. And honestly, that's how I like to trail ride. I like to hit trees. I like to go down. It's part of my adventurous side. So that's just one piece of ways that we sacrifice that authenticity in hopes that we have a healthy attachment with somebody. And you can't have a healthy attachment if you're not truly who you are.
Correct. Yeah, because that will eventually deteriorate. You might get in a relationship based on love, chemistry, neurochemistry, attraction, sex, whatever it is. Like there might be something that draws you together. That's just biological. Then once you get into it, the thing that keeps you together, the glue of a relationship, is authenticity. 100% is. Because once you're attached, now you've got two people that have mess. You've got healthy and unhealthy ways you're going to create connection. And you have to decide, is the person I'm with really the person I want to be with? Well, the only way that you know that is if they're giving you their authentic self.
Yeah, and it takes time for that.
Sure.
You don't get that out the gate.
Yep.
And social media certainly won't give that to you.
No.
You've got to get time in and let yourself be who you are.
I love this. So I'm going to pull, like, really get grounded on this because the how I think is so important. And I think a lot of men haven't asked these hard-hitting questions, like, what is most important to me? Like, who am I? What is most important to me? I love the idea of creating a list of things I actually hate and then comparing it to your priorities and things that you're doing throughout the week. Like, how much of your day is designed around doing things you didn't want to do that you just said yes to because you're stuck in it?
Yeah, I love that. And for a lot of guys that can do something tangibly for themselves, is that you create, whether it's an I hate, which is helpful, but really to get down to the I ams. When you understand who you are or the man that you want to be, right? The things that you value, what you're passionate about. I am strong. I am brilliant. I have a lot to say. I have so much to give. I'm a leader. All the things you can say about yourself, speaking those over yourself is so powerful. And it can actually help you unlock the authentic potential that's been there for decades that you've been suppressing. And really, if you can unlock yourself, then you have the ability to be a gift again. Not saying you're not a gift in general, but you have the ability to be a gift again in the relationships that you're a part of. Yeah. Because you've been withholding it. So stop withholding it.
True. The world needs your gifts. The world needs your authenticity. Yeah. What are some ways that you have, I know you said the trail riding, but what are some other ways that you have reconnected with authentic self? Maybe reconnected with aspects of things you did when you were younger. How does that show up?
So part of my authentic self is I'm naturally a competitor. I don't play for any sports teams by any means, but I do CrossFit. So CrossFit has helped me tap into the authentic portion of me that needs to compete with other people. Have to do it. Trail riding actually helps me tap into a little bit of my violent side. I don't just get out and lollygag on the trails. I really want to push hard enough to where I go down several times. I actually like coming home with bruises and cuts because like I did something, I scared myself. Yeah. And so I really enjoy that. And also Aaron and I have gotten in the ring before a few times. We'll continue to do this, but I really like fighting. Not fighting for the sake of I want to get in a bar fight, but I love the conflict, the physical conflict that comes with that.
Every man should.
I agree. And so those are the three main ways for me that I tap into the authentic portion of who I am. Outside of at home, I enjoy conflict. I know I said that, but I really enjoy the potential that's hidden in conflict. But in my home, most men don't get this out of me, but I'm incredibly tender. I'm very present. So with my girls, the authentic part of who I am is, and I believe it's a very masculine part of who I am, is that I am tender, that I'm present, that I don't lean on just my proximity of being home, but I'm in the world of my girls. I love on them. I'm very gentle with them. I'm eyeball to eyeball with my little 5-year-old, and that requires me to get on my knees and just be at her eye level and be with her. Yeah. So that's a very authentic portion of who I am, is the tender, protective, present dad and father and husband. So those are different ways that I meet the need that I have of being the authentic portion of myself. And then my attachments have all grown because of that. That's something I get to bring to men around me.
I love that. I love that. I think about something that I've reconnected with within the last couple months that I put down for a long time. I'm an artist, like probably by nature, like a very creative person. I love creating things. But a very authentic part of myself is creating something just to create. And so I've got this painting in my bachelor pad, and this
It's
painting,
huge.
It's a 4 foot by 3 foot. I'll post it at some point. But it's Sacred Heart it's a sacrament of Jesus from more of the Catholic side. But it's just something I'm working on, just to be able to work on something, have no expressed outcome for it, just to do it.
Yeah, and that's so important. And and there's so much meaning in it too for you. We talked about this, the meaning that you had just in the experience of turning off the phone, being in your quiet space, allowing your thoughts to come into color, and what you did with that. And so I love that you started doing that again.
Yeah, and I think about so many guys. There's typically something you need to do that you haven't done in a while that would bring you back to the best version of yourself. It's that guy that got the relationship first and foremost. It's that guy that she fell in love with. It's that guy that's going to lead your son or your daughter to their authentic self. It's that guy that's going to contribute to the world, to the marketplace. It's going to have the innovation, because our pastor talks about this. It's your divine fingerprint that will allow you to leave an imprint that only you can. It's your uniqueness, your 1%. That only you can bring, and that's authenticity. But if you're not being authentic, the world is this dull. It's just this dullness. I don't know a better word for it. It's dull.
It's true. It's true. And so we all have parts of ourselves that nobody has to bring.
Yeah.
And the world is waiting. It's needing who we are.
Yeah.
And if you continue to suppress and repress that just for the sake of living your life as you've been living it,
Or to fit in.
Yeah.
Then your partner's also not getting the very best of you.
Oh, preach.
And that's the biggest thing. You know, we've talked about two things. We want to land a plane on this, but we're talking about attachment theory. So the 3 attachment theories: your island. Okay, I want to avoid things. I want to be alone when intimacy, conflict, or confrontation happens. The wave, it's anxiety based. It's unsure, uncertain, insecure. Or there's the healthy attachment style, which is the anchor. And these 3 interplay in your relationship dynamic. But the attachment style will typically override your authenticity if you're unaware of how you attach.
Yeah, and you'll notice it in yourself. You'll notice, you'll feel yourself
Hiding.
like a snail going into its shell,
Yeah.
however you want to say that. You stay reserved, you stay conservative in who you are. There's a part of you, there's a lion inside of you that's dying to get out, and you feel it. There's a part of your life that's just not congruent with who you are.
So good.
And I know if you're hearing this, then you can probably, as quickly as I snap my finger, think about the parts of your life that you're not living to its full potential.
No.
That's not your authentic self. You've got to not only realize it, but you've got to take action to it. Be bold enough to step into who you are. Go do the things you need. If you need to jump out of an airplane, go freaking jump out of an airplane. If you need to go read a book that you've been sitting on your nightstand for 9 years, go read the book. Do what you need. If you need to paint a painting, go get a canvas and paint it. Don't even have to sell it. Just do it. It's not like it's got to be a new career, but step into who you have, the gifting of who you are, so that you can be that in your relationships.
Yeah. And I'd say also be willing to know when to be willing to have the conversations with yourself of, if any relationship, job, or situation that I'm in will not fully accept and love my true authentic self, it's probably something you need to end, edit, or exit from.
That's good.
And so we get into these, and this is where attachment is, there's so much depth here, and I really hope you guys do read the book and also do your own research on it. But attachment theory is driving your decisions in your romantic relationship and connection. Like, think about sports. We can talk about sports on that too.
Goodness.
Men attach themselves to sports. They may not even be interested in, just to feel attached or part of a tribe. So it creates a whole nother area of, like, I'm doing something I'm not really interested in because everyone else is doing it. Yeah. So how many relationships, whether in the workplace, in your romantic relationship, friendships, are you just going with the flow simply because you're fearing showing up the way that you want to? And so this is where, if you understand what you truly are, what you want to be, your authentic self, you can actually have the question like, okay, am I in any relationships that are unhealthy to me? And or if I show up the way that I really need to show up, will they still love and accept me? And if the answer is no, get out of it.
Unless you're married. That's a separate conversation.
Separate conversation, yeah. Have my thoughts on that. But know this before you get into your marriage.
Yes.
Because you'll be bringing your best to it. And inside of your relationship dynamic, this is theory on my side, but you can fact check me on this. is knowing these attachment styles and how they show up inside of the dynamic allows you to show up for your partner in a more healing way.
Yes, and that's the key. The desire in life ought to be to become an anchor.
Yes.
And regardless of what your
partner become an anchor.
Regardless of what your current style is, you can become an anchor. But
100%.
you'll not get there if you don't take the time to dive into this, understand yourself, understand where your purpose is, understand what you value, understand the things that have not been serving you, and do something about it.
So good. So good. All right, guys, there's a lot more meat on this, but I'll leave you with a couple tools. One, get the book Wired for Love. Understand attachment theory. There's 3 that we talked about: the wave, the anchor, and the island. There is a 4th once you nerd out and do the Google on it. And then, of course, authenticity. The questions we want to leave you guys with is, are you living your authentic life? What are the things that you need to do that will ignite that passion, that intensity, that excitement for who you're going to be inside of the world?
That's right. Stop playing small. You've done it for too long. You are a high value man. And the moment you dive into this and quit playing small, you'll realize that line that's inside of you. Stop being a Pam. If you're watching this, it's right behind me. Stop being a Pam. Stop being passive. That's not meant for you. You're a masculine man. Step into it.
Boom. Much love, many blessings. Talk to you soon.
Get off the podcast. Get back to the fucking mental lab.